We all want to look good, right? I mean, it seems so simple, maybe even a bit superficial on the surface. But what if this desire, this need, isn't trivial at all? What if it's actually a deeply wired, universal human drive, one that's profoundly shaping our lives, our society, in ways we maybe don't even consciously consider? Okay, so let's unpack this. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into something called the science of human self-presentation, an AI-driven analysis of the need to look good. This is a pretty incredible meta-analysis. It pulls together insights from, well, everywhere: evolutionary biology, neurobiology, psychology, sociology, and really tries to deconstruct exactly why we're wired this way, how it impacts us day to day, and even what it means for our future. Our mission, really, is to pull out the most important insights from this AI's perspective, basically giving you a shortcut to understanding this really fundamental human thing. So when we start talking about the science of needing to look good, this deep dive immediately pushes us beyond just, like, physical attractiveness. What exactly is this report getting at?
Yeah, that's one of the first things that jumps out. What's truly fascinating here is how the report defines looking good. It's really not about superficial aesthetics in the way we might initially think. Fundamentally, it's about impression management.
Impression management. Oh.
Right. Think of it as this conscious or sometimes even subconscious process where we as individuals try to influence how others see us, or even how they perceive an object or an event. We do this by sort of regulating and controlling the information we share during social interactions. So this whole science of looking good, it's really a science of social influence. It's strategic communication, fundamentally.
That suggests it's almost like a continuous performance, doesn't it? A dynamic thing we're all doing, presenting this desired version of ourselves to the world. And the AI's framework for looking at this, it spans time, past, present, future, by integrating these like massive data sets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the bedrock, the absolute foundation of this whole phenomenon is our basic human drive for social connection and self-evaluation. Humans are inherently social creatures, right? We just are. We have this deep-seated need to form and maintain relationships. And getting social acceptance, for our brains, that's like a central task, a primary goal.
Right.
And this is kind of complemented by something called social comparison theory.
Oh, I guess.
Which is basically how we figure out our own opinions, our abilities, even our looks, by constantly comparing ourselves to others. It helps us reduce uncertainty, and define who we are in relation to the group.
Okay, so if this drive is so fundamental, so core to being human, where does the science say it actually comes from? This report points to some seriously deep roots: evolutionary, biological, neurobiological.
It really does. The drive is profoundly rooted in evolutionary processes, particularly sexual selection.
Sexual selection.
Yeah, that's the whole process where typically one sex chooses a mate, aiming for the best reproductive success. And that naturally leads to competition. Think about how certain physical traits, things like, specific body shapes, facial hair patterns in men, voice pitch, even symmetry, these serve as ancient signals. Signals of health, fertility, maybe good genetic quality. The report even notes things like female indirect aggression, gossip, reputation manipulation, especially in mate competition, has likely been shaped by this very imperative, trying to look good relative to rivals.
So it's not just arbitrary taste. There's a biological, functional basis for what we find attractive. The desire to look good actually serves a purpose for survival and reproduction.
Precisely. It's functional. And this, of course, raises an important question. What about individual differences? Why does one person seem to care so much more about external validation than another? The report definitely highlights genetic factors here. It notes that the big five personality traits, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, these are estimated to be about 50% heritable.
50%? Wow.
Yeah. And these innate tendencies really shape our social behavior and how much we feel that push for self-presentation and social validation. So an extroverted person, for instance, might just naturally seek more external validation through their appearance or their actions.
Our brains are obviously right in the thick of this too, aren't they? The whole neurobiology of social rewards must play a huge part.
Absolutely. Our brains are just intricately wired to process social acceptance and positive feedback as incredibly powerful rewards. The brain's core reward circuitry, the striatum, the medial prefrontal cortex, these key areas.
The same ones that light up for food or money.
Exactly the same ones. Socially relevant rewards like approval, acceptance, praise, they activate these very same regions, just like those primary non-social rewards. This creates this really powerful self-reinforcing loop. You get approval, it feels good, you seek more approval. And the report makes a really interesting point about how modern Digital platforms have, well, latched onto and maybe even exploited this ancient neural pathway.
Ah, social media.
Right. Think about that little dopamine hit you get from a like or a positive comment. It's tapping into that same fundamental reward pathway, which can make the pursuit of online social validation potentially compulsive for some people.
That's actually a perfect segue into what the AI analysis calls the science of human smarts in self-presentation. It suggests it's not just about wanting to look good, but about being genuinely clever about how we do it.
That's spot on. This refers to the sophisticated cognitive and social intelligence we humans use to strategically manage our image. It's complex stuff. It involves understanding really subtle social cues, anticipating how others might react to us, and then adapting our behavior, sometimes instantly. The report mentions Irving Goffman's dramaturgical analogy.
Like life is a stage play.
Exactly. It compares our social performances to a theatrical play. We're all actors, essentially, and we need what he called dramaturgical discipline to keep our show running smoothly without embarrassing interruptions. That means knowing how to handle unexpected situations, maybe recovering gracefully from a faux pas. And there's also variation in how well individuals can self-monitor their ability to adjust their presentation based on the social context. It's a highly adaptive trait, really. It allows us to maximize social rewards and minimize social costs in different environments.
So, okay, we're basically wired for this drive, biologically and evolutionarily.
Yeah.
And we developed this complex social intelligence to manage it. But how does society itself, the world around us, play into this constant push to look good?
Yeah, society's role is huge. And social comparison theory is absolutely key here again. We're just constantly evaluating ourselves, our opinion, our abilities, our appearances by comparing them to others all the time. And this process is often driven by a desire for self-enhancement, wanting to feel good about ourselves. Now, you can make what are called downward comparisons.
Looking at someone you perceive as worse off.
Right, to boost your own self-esteem. But, and this is a big but, social media in particular has become a platform that unfortunately seems to result in far more upward comparisons.
Where we're constantly seeing people who seem to be better off or look better or have more.
Exactly. We're seeing the highlight reels.
Yeah.
These idealized, carefully curated versions of other people's lives.
And that's often where the trouble starts, isn't it? If that's your constant input.
It really can be. This relentless exposure to seemingly perfect lives, while maybe sometimes motivating for some, can also create wildly unrealistic expectations. It can erode self-worth and leave us with this pervasive, nagging sense of feeling not good enough. And this impression management, while it's adaptive, like we said, it also creates this constant tension. A tension between our genuine, authentic self and the strategically presented self we put out there. It raises profound questions about authenticity and even the potential for, self-deception. Are we fooling others or ourselves?
So this ties right back to that fundamental need we talked about, social acceptance and validation. The report identifies that as a core component of human nature.
Yes. Absolutely. Validation is that crucial recognition and acceptance of another person's thoughts, feelings, behaviors as understandable, as legitimate. It's a vital building block for our self-esteem. But this innate need also creates a fundamental vulnerability. We're vulnerable to external influence, even manipulation. Individuals might start to prioritize that external approval, conformity over their own internal well-being or what feels truly authentic to them.
And that vulnerability, that need for approval, can lead us straight into issues of conformity and social pressure, can it?
Precisely. Societal norms, group expectations, they exert significant pressure on us. Individuals frequently adjust their behaviors, their opinions, even their appearance to match those of the group. Why? To gain acceptance, to be perceived as normal. Now, sometimes that's beneficial for social cohesion, for belonging, but it can also lead to a kind of homogenization of appearance and behavior, potentially stifling individuality and maybe fostering a culture that values superficiality over substance.
Let's try and put this drive into a bit more historical context.
Yeah.
Because this deep dive makes it really clear that looking good isn't some new modern obsession tied only to Instagram filters. The report takes us on quite a fascinating journey through time.
It really does. And what's particularly striking is seeing how dramatically beauty standards have shifted across different eras and cultures. Yet, despite the changes, they've always served as powerful symbols. Symbols of status, power, identity. You look at ancient Egypt, for instance, symmetry was the absolute gold standard. Kohl, eyeliner, elaborate wigs. Those weren't just fashion, they symbolized high status.
Yeah.
Then you go to ancient Greece, and it was all about celebrating muscular male bodies, and for women, soft, pale skin. Ancient China saw huge shifts from favoring plump faces during the Tang Dynasty to valuing slender figures in the Song Dynasty alongside the really quite painful practice of foot binding.
And it gets even more diverse than that, doesn't it? Looking globally.
Oh, absolutely. In ancient India, for example, voluptuous figures were often celebrated as symbols of fertility and life. The Mayans actually altered their physical appearance through practices like head shaping to achieve elongated skulls, and they admired crossed eyes.
Wow.
Even the Vikings. We often picture them as rugged, maybe unkempt warriors, but archaeological finds show they were meticulous about their appearance. Grooming tools, combs, tweezers, even tattoos were common. And in ancient Japan, for upper-class married women, blackening their teeth, ohaguro was considered a sign of maturity and beauty. It's an incredible spectrum.
So seeing all these dramatic historical changes, what does this tell us about our concept of looking good today?
Well, the evolution just keeps going, doesn't it? The Victorian era, for instance, linked beauty strongly to morality and virtue. Then the Roaring Twenties brought the flapper aesthetic, symbolizing female liberation and a break from tradition. The 1940s and 50s were dominated by Hollywood glamour, very specific ideals. Today, things are complex. Beauty is arguably becoming more inclusive, more diverse in many ways, and social media has certainly democratized self-expression, allowing more people to define and share their own look.
But that digital democratization, as you call it, also seems to bring some pretty significant challenges. It's definitely not all positive, is it?
No, it's very much a double-edged sword. That constant exposure we talked about to carefully curated, often highly idealized representations on social media, it can fuel that pervasive social comparison and those feelings of inadequacy. Users are frequently comparing their real, messy, authentic lives to these polished, often filtered, unrealistic images. And that can lead to anxiety, envy, and what psychologists call self-discrepancy, that uncomfortable gap between who you feel you are and who you think you should be based on these images. And that significantly contributes to mental health issues.
So what you're essentially saying is while the specific ways we try to look good, the fashion, the ideals, are culturally fluid and change over time, the underlying drive for it, the need for acceptance and status, that remains universal.
Precisely. That's the core takeaway. What is considered beautiful or acceptable or high status constantly changes. It's relative. But the fundamental psychological and biological mechanisms pushing humans to strive for these ideals, the deep desire for social acceptance, for status, for reproductive success, and that universal neurobiological reward system that makes social approval feel good, those remain constant. They are the unchanging engine beneath the ever-shifting surface of cultural standards.
Okay, it's definitely clear that this isn't just a negative story, though. The report is balanced. Yeah. The pursuit of a favorable image, this whole impression management thing, it also has some powerful positive impacts, right?
Absolutely. It's crucial to see both sides. The report identifies several key benefits. For instance, individuals who are perceived as attractive often experience higher self-confidence. And that confidence doesn't just stay internal, it translates into a greater willingness to engage in new activities, pursue challenges, put themselves out there, and then there's a well-documented halo effect.
Right, where we assume attractive people have other good qualities too.
Yeah. Exactly. Attractive people are often unconsciously assumed to possess other desirable traits, like intelligence, kindness, trustworthiness. This isn't necessarily fair or even accurate, but it happens. And it suggests a fundamental bias in our perception, where we might unconsciously attribute competence based purely on appearance, even in professional settings.
And this halo effect, this confidence boost, it leads to some tangible, real-world benefits for individuals.
It really seems to. Research suggests that people who are considered good-looking often find it easier to build friendships, secure romantic partners, and yes, even succeed professionally. Physical attractiveness has been linked to things like greater social integration, more favorable treatment in academic settings, potentially leading to better grades, believe it or not, and even a documented wage premium in the labor market. Attractive people, on average, earn more. Yeah. And attractive individuals also tend to be more persuasive, which is a trait that can even be leveraged for genuinely good things, for pro-social behaviors like mobilizing support for charitable campaigns. Think of celebrity endorsements, for example. And then on a broader societal level, that shared need for social validation, for fitting in, it strongly reinforces group identity. It can foster social cohesion and a sense of community, which are vital.
But there's always a but, isn't there? This incredibly powerful drive clearly has a darker side, too. What are some of the main negative ramifications the report highlights, especially now, amplified in our digital age?
Oh, definitely. The relentless pursuit of an idealized image can, and does, lead to significant psychological and societal harms. It's undeniable. On the mental health front, we've touched on this, but that constant exposure to idealized, often unrealistic images contributes significantly to low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and more severe conditions like body dysmorphia, that obsessive preoccupation with perceived physical flaws. And it can certainly be a contributing factor to serious eating disorders. And that dopamine loop from social media we discussed, it can also foster genuinely addictive behaviors around validation seeking and that persistent fear of missing out, FOMO, which fuels anxiety.
And what about the wider societal impacts, beyond individual mental health struggles?
Well, there's the issue of appearance-based discrimination, often called lookism.
Lookism, okay.
Yeah. While it's not always explicitly illegal in the same way as other forms of discrimination, it undeniably leads to measurable advantages for attractive people and clear biases against others in hiring, promotions, even social interactions. Then you have the beauty and personal care industry. It's a massive economic force, contributes hugely to GDP, generates jobs, but it also inherently thrives on and actively perpetuates often unattainable beauty standards. It needs people to feel they need improving.
Right, it fuels the very drive it profits from.
Precisely. And then there's the potential for manipulation, particularly by leaders or figures of authority. They can exploit our very human need for a positive public image to control narratives, enhance their own standing through propaganda, spin, distortion of facts, which deeply erodes authenticity and trust in public discourse.
And the report even suggests it can extend to intergroup conflict. That seems like quite a leap from wanting to look good personally.
Yeah.
How does that connection work?
It might seem like a leap, but it's not as big as it sounds when you think about group identity. The drive to look good isn't just individual. It extends to the groups we belong to. Social identity theory helps explain this. It posits that individuals seek positive distinctiveness for their in-group, the group they identify with, whether it's national, ethnic, social, whatever.
Wanting us to look better than them.
Essentially, yes. We often achieve this feeling of positive distinctiveness by viewing our own group as superior, maybe looking down on or viewing with contempt outsiders or other groups. This can directly fuel intergroup conflict, prejudice, stereotyping, even the suppression of cultural diversity if one group's look or norms are seen as the only good ones. It feeds that us versus them mentality, and it can start with perceived differences in appearance or status markers.
Okay, wow. So given this incredibly complex web of impacts, the good, the bad, the individual, the societal, it really forces us to confront some important ethical considerations. How can we possibly navigate this going forward?
It really does, and the report definitely delves into that. It highlights, for instance, the core ethical tension between authenticity and strategic self-presentation. Authenticity, being true and honest with oneself and others, is generally seen as a virtue. But the pursuit of looking good, as we've defined it through impression management, almost always involves some degree of strategic presentation. And that can easily lead to feelings of inauthenticity or that psychological discomfort, cognitive dissonance, when our actions don't align with our inner sense of self.
So how do we balance that natural, perhaps even necessary drive to present ourselves well in social contexts versus the ethical need or desire to be true to ourselves?
Well, the report suggests looking at frameworks like virtue ethics. This perspective would argue that looking good should be less about manipulating external appearances and more about cultivating inner virtues, things like honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, wisdom. These are qualities that genuinely contribute to human flourishing, or eudaimonia. And it also touches on natural law theory, which posits inherent moral principles derived from human nature. From this view, if our drive to look good starts promoting unrealistic standards, causing harm through discrimination, or enabling manipulation, it's actually deviating from our true ethical human nature or purpose.
That's a really interesting, almost philosophical way to frame it. And you mentioned it even ties into something as fundamental as our social contract with each other.
Indeed. You could argue that our reputation is almost a fundamental right, or at least a key element within social contract theory. We live together based on certain mutual understandings and respect. So while we absolutely have the freedom to present ourselves as we choose, that freedom isn't unlimited. It's inherently limited by the need to respect others' reputations and well-being. Ideally, our self-presentation should contribute positively to social harmony, not undermine it through deceit, defamation, or fostering harmful comparisons. It's about being a responsible participant in the social world.
Okay, so bringing all of this incredible analysis together, the biology, the psychology, the history, the ethics, what are some of the key recommendations that emerge from this AI-driven analysis? How can we foster healthier self-perception and maybe a more harmonious society around this issue?
The report offers a multifaceted approach, tackling it from different angles. First, when thinking about fostering healthy development, especially in young people, it really emphasizes promoting self-validation and self-acceptance that comes from internal sources, not just external likes or approval.
Building inner resilience. Exactly. And hand in hand with that is developing critical media literacy, helping kids and adults too understand the filters, the curation, the algorithms, and consciously avoid falling into harmful social comparison traps. And alongside that, genuinely emphasizing and celebrating authentic self-expression and individuality rather than just conformity to narrow ideals. That makes a lot of sense, focusing on education and internal resources, especially starting young. What about society at large, structurally?
Well, for society, one interesting point is about electing virtuous leaders, leaders who genuinely prioritize character, wisdom, and the common good over a carefully manipulated public image. This means us, as citizens, demanding transparency, demanding consistency between their actions and their stated values, and holding them accountable to something called the logic of appropriateness, basically, acting in ways that are generally accepted as right and proper within a given societal context, prioritizing collective well-being over personal gain or image.
And beyond leadership, how do we try to harmonize this drive within our broader society and even with nature, as the report suggests?
That involves a few things. One is reevaluating the industries that heavily influence our perception of good looking, like beauty and fashion, particularly regarding their environmental impact. Promoting sustainable consumption is part of it. Another key aspect is actively promoting inclusivity by working to reduce appearance-based discrimination, that lookism we talked about. Practical steps could include things like using appearance-neutral job descriptions or implementing widespread unconscious bias training in workplaces and institutions.
And finally, what about addressing some of the more extreme negative outcomes we discussed? The mental health struggles, the potential for conflict.
That really requires patience, tolerance, and a focus on support and rehabilitation rather than just judgment. This includes things like providing accessible, affordable mental health support for individuals struggling with body image issues, eating disorders, or social media addiction. Implementing broad educational programs about these issues is key. Also, holding leaders, media outlets, and tech platforms accountable for the narratives and images they promote. And perhaps most importantly, fostering strong, supportive real-world communities, families, friendships, local groups that provide genuine validation based on who people truly are, their character and contributions, not just how they appear online or offline.
So, wrapping this up, our deep dive really reveals that this need to look good is this enduring paradox, isn't it? It's right at the heart of our human social existence. It's clearly an ancient adaptive mechanism wired into us for survival and social cohesion, powerfully reinforced by our brain's reward system, which makes getting social acceptance feel inherently pleasurable.
Exactly. Yet especially when amplified by today's digital technologies and commercial pressures, this very same innate drive becomes incredibly susceptible to distortion, to manipulation, and that can lead to real psychological distress for individuals and significant societal problems.
The path forward, then, it seems, lies in consciously trying to realign this fundamental human drive, moving it away from potentially harmful extremes and aligning it more with principles of authenticity, inner virtue, and maybe what the report calls natural human flourishing. It sounds like it's about transforming it from a potential source of suffering, comparison, and conflict into a force that genuinely contributes to individual well-being and perhaps a more balanced, harmonious world overall. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener. What could you do, even in a small way, to foster more authenticity in your own life? Or perhaps to promote a broader, more inclusive, maybe kinder understanding of what good really means in your community or online spaces? That's definitely something worth mulling over until our next deep dive.
This is DigitView.